Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some Path of Exile discussion. Today, patch 3.17.4 was released, and seems to have gone pretty smoothly so far, fingers crossed that it stays that way. 3.17.4 has a number of graphics changes in it, most notably the addition of DirectX 12 support. So DirectX 12 is something that tends to run pretty well on the very newest graphics cards, something that's worth giving a try to, but just be aware that this support is currently in beta. If you're interested in setting it up, go into the options menu on PC, and in the renderer section, you can choose between DirectX 11, which is the default, the Vulkan renderer, which is no longer considered in beta, and the DirectX 12 beta. So just try all three of them. You'll find that sometimes one of them will cause you to have more crashes than the others, and obviously pick a different one. Also, some of them will run more or less smoothly in-game. These have changed over time too. If you've given Vulkan a go early on and you were really disappointed with it, give it another shot now. It does seem to be working pretty well. That said, I will be playing on DirectX 12 in the short term. So one thing I've done to test this is I've set up a number of garbage effects in my hideout. I've got this very, very graphically intensive fog, which is just much more impactful on performance than it should be, or at least it was on DirectX 11. And then I've got all of these automaton ring effects, these really ugly rings that really jump out and look horrible and just dominate the screen, but they also are very resource intensive. I am noticing absolutely no slowdown on DirectX 12 as I sort of jump around with that. But that said, that might just be that my PC is too strong for the level of stress I'm putting it under. We'll be able to test this out a bit more in the future with things like running Harbinger encounters in Delirious maps, things that are notoriously bad for game performance. Anyway, that is the changes that were made to the graphics rendering system. Let's just quickly go through the rest of the patch notes. So there's all the things that we were talking about the engine and technical changes section. I really like the way that GGG put these out, these major sorts of changes at the very end of a league, so that if there is a serious problem with them, then they can revert to the old system before it wrecks a league start. There's a number of changes to controller support. Now, I haven't played with a controller yet in Path of Exile. In fact, I probably should. I managed to finally find the Steam controller that was hiding somewhere in my room, and I finally managed to find that, and I should give it a go, but I haven't done so yet. However, just a number of significant quality of life changes for controller support, things that people who have been using PC controller have been requesting for a while. Then there's a number of little general changes. Now, there's nothing massive here. There's a lot of little things that are worth knowing about. Scouting reports can now stack to ridiculous numbers in the currency stash tab. This is only going to affect you if you're a trader. Some sextant modifiers have just had a little bit more information put on them, which is always important. It doesn't seem like there are any actual changes to what the sextants themselves did, just things where the game is now giving you more information than it was. Performance on the Celestial Frostbomb microtransaction. This was terrible in the past, so hopefully that fixes that. I don't have a Frostbomb-based character, so I haven't been able to test it. The Arakali's Mortar skill was absolutely brutal. This is the thing. If you died to Arakali and you were like, what on earth happened? The reason for that was this bug. So that bug is fixed. A number of other little bug fixes that matter, like Elder Guardians being unable to spawn metamorph files after you left the areas. That's just something that was a little irritation that would come up once in a blue moon. Rogue Exiles were bugged in the Relic Chambers map. That's the sort of thing that no player would ever have noticed, especially with Relic Chambers, I think, not being on the Atlas this league. I don't think I've run that map this league, but that's the sort of thing that no player would notice, but because GGG run a bunch of statistics that we wouldn't, they're able to pick up that that was the case. The Piranda's Signet Unique Ring has a mod on it that causes monsters to have an increased chance to drop Scrolls of Wisdom. That was only working for rare monsters. It's now being fixed, and that is going to result in some really, really, really hilarious situations where someone equips that in a 5-way Domain of Timeless Conflict and gets something like 300 Wisdom Scrolls when they finish it. Maybe 600 if they equip one on each finger and manage to somehow still get a really high number of kills in that zone. So that's going to look really funny. There'll be some really good funny joke videos that people make around this. Otherwise, I don't think it's all that important to fix. Scrolls of Wisdom are worthless nowadays. There were some issues with the reroll rewards button, which was a nasty bug in the sense that you had access to a free reroll, but the game told you you didn't. It actually did reroll it for free, but that was a nasty bug that's been fixed. Various Flask modifiers had their tier numbers fixed, like there was a bug with them. Not all that big a deal in terms of it doesn't change the game in any way. It just means that you're getting more accurate information from the game, which is a common thread throughout this patch. And then there's a change that will matter to a lot of people. Fixed a bug where damage conversion explicit modifiers could not be unveiled on gloves if they already had a damage conversion implicit modifier. So this won't come up all that often, but it is worth noting. People used to sometimes block the damage conversion modifiers on gloves. So when using Veiled Chaos Orbs, you can no longer do this. For most people, this is not going to be something that would ever come up. And it's just one of those changes that is obviously GGG have decided that it needs to be made before the next league. But it's not going to affect many people, but there'll be just the odd person that will be like, oh, I really wish that still worked, but it doesn't anymore. Fix a bug that caused the Reckless Ambition Divination card, which from my recollection is for Omniscient, to not drop properly in certain situations. So it drops from the Eradicator when you encounter the Eradicator in maps at the moment, but now it will also be able to drop from the Eradicator in other environments. This is the sort of thing that it's good that GGG find this, because there was no way players would ever have worked out that this bug was existing. When there is a bug that causes an item to not drop from a specific location, but it's still dropping elsewhere, players are not going to pick up that it's a bug. And so it's a good thing that GGG have noticed this. They've obviously done an analysis of where divination cards are dropping, and they've compared it to the list of where they're meant to drop and gone, oh, you know what? This should be dropping and it's not, so we need to fix it, and put it in the patch notes that that's the case. So I'm glad that that one has been fixed, because it's still somewhat significant. Trivial little changes here. Expedition artifacts from Danig can now be purchased if your inventory is full. Like, that's just a tiny quality of life change that you'll almost never notice. Fractured and synthesized items were not grayed out in your inventory when selling them to a vendor or when filtered out in your stash, so that's just fixing the way that those things appear. Something that exactly one person will probably care about, but will be kind of funny. There is a vendor recipe for an item called the Goddess Scorned, and this is now going to be possible to make an influenced version of, which is just going to be purely for the laughs. Other than that, there's a couple of crash fixes and a couple of bug fixes that are tiny. So patch 3.17.4, definitely worth giving it a try. One thing that's worth noting is that when you first load the game up, you will encounter a period where the game is clearing the cache. That's something you'll just need to wait through. In my case, it took about 20 seconds. If you're running a lower end PC than I am, it might take a minute or two. That is going to be important for future performance. It's not so much that the cache needs to be cleared as often as GGG do it, but just if they didn't do it at least once every 2 or 3 leagues, people that play a lot would end up having some problems with it. That's all I got. May Eval Orbs have interesting results.